Be sure to go to flipsidegaming.com and use promo code 6 for 10% off on orders over $10. You can do the same at the Grizzly Gentleman for some fantastic beard products that'll make your beard look and smell great. You can also go to TCG Player using the affiliate link below and shop there to help support the show. And last but absolutely not least, go to greyvikinggames.com with the link below to get those sweet arena codes.
What's up, Planeswalkers? Justin AK6 back with some more Magic the Gathering. It's not supposed to do that, fun fact. Regardless, hello everyone. It's Big Face Cam Justin again, and I just want to let everyone know that I will be streaming the Arena Open, which is historic, which is fantastic for me because that's what I like to play, and that's what we're talking about today. Today over on Twitch at 6 Streaming, you'll see the links in the description down below. Once again, I would like to point out that this is a bit of a new format that I'm testing out. Please let me know what you think of it. This entire video, frankly, is a bit of a new format in terms of how it will actually look. So let me know how it looks, how it sounds, all of that nonsense, and let me know in the comments down below. And while you're there, like, subscribe. Why not? Anyway, today we're talking about the top 15 cards in Streets of New Capenna for specifically historic. And what I've done is I went through each of the colors and picked one from them. I took an artifact, and then I took one from each family as well for the multicolored. And then I threw in a few extra. I think I had like 3 or something left over. Anyway, without further ado, let's just hop into it. So for white, I picked Extraction Specialist here, and the big reason is because it can technically fit into so many different decks, right? It is very nice in just a human shell, being able to buy back one of your important humans. Obviously, it can't attack or block, but that doesn't necessarily matter if you're getting back something like a Kitesail Freebooter to, once again, annoy your opponent. If you're getting back a Thalia to, again, annoy your opponent. If you're getting back a Thalia's Lieutenant, right, to boost your board, then you're still getting that value from having this card come down. What is also nice is that this can slide into Death and Taxes, which is something that I enjoy. But also, this could potentially be a part of a new upcoming deck. We've seen a couple of different non-Dimir rogues show up in New Capenna, and maybe we can see a rogue deck that isn't just Dimir. Moving on to the blue card, we have Slip Out the Back. I hate mono blue tempo. However, it's kind of that deck that's always there. Sometimes it's on the downswing, sometimes it's on the upswing. It's recently been on a bit of a downswing, but I do think that Slip Out the Back might be a better card in many situations than something like Dive Down, right? So Dive Down does allow them to block, which is good, but Dive Down doesn't protect them from board wipes. They have to have a counterspell for that, and if they don't have a counterspell, or they're playing against a deck that also runs counterspells and is totally fine countering your counter, then whoop-de-doo, your creature's dead. Now you have some protection spells in your hand that are worth nothing. But with Slip Out the Back, it protects it from everything. It gets a counter, so it has a permanent buff, which most of the buffs don't give it. Most of the defensive spells don't give a permanent buff. And then it phases out. So it just isn't there. It just isn't there, can't be interacted with. It's fantastic, right? It's possible that we could also see this in some other deck that is trying to combo that uses creatures. I just personally don't know what they would be. For black, I had to pick Tenacious Underdog. I think this card is incredibly strong. We've already seen like the 2-mana 3/2 stat line in kind of the mono black aggro decks be pretty good. We've seen previously Scrap Heap Scrounger, for example, and when they're able to come back, that's even better, right? You can have this as a 2-mana 3/2. And then you can just keep bringing it back once you hit to the late game. And not only do you get this creature, but you're also being able to draw a card from that, right? When it dies, you draw a card. You sacrifice it at the next end step. So you're going to be paying 4 mana and 2 life to have a hasty 3/2 that draws you a card. And you can keep casting it from your graveyard because this is sack, not exile. I think that if we see more from a mono black or black light splash something else aggro deck, I definitely think that Underdog is going to be a big part of that. Moving on to red, we have Urabrask, Heretic Praetor. I don't care what anyone says. I think people are sleeping on Urabrask, man. I understand that it's no Goldspan Dragon, but in the right deck, in a deck where you are going to be able to cast just a bunch of spells, just throwing them constantly. Or in a situation where maybe you're a kind of red mid-range deck, right, and you're going against a control deck, being able to force control decks to only be able to play their top decks on that turn is incredible. I understand that they have draw spells that can help them, but making it so that, you know, they top deck a board wipe, but they're in a situation where board wiping you is pretty bad, right? Or they top deck a counter spell, for example. They can't just hold that. They can't hold that for a more opportune time. They get screwed over. And that's why I think Urbrask is the red choice. For green, I went with Topiary Stomper. Again, this is another card that I feel like people might be sleeping on a little bit, just a tiny bit. Because, like, it's a 3-mana 4/4 that ramps you. It technically doesn't do anything else until you have 7 more lands. But especially in Historic, you can get 7 lands real fast, right? You can also just use this at, like, you can look at it as essentially a reason. Like, this is just rampant growth, except it costs 1 more to get a 4/4 vigilance creature eventually, right? I think this card is pretty dang good. It also just works in nice kind of big green decks, the ones that do want to have some of those early aggressive creatures, but also that do play these Nissas, do play these, you know, these Elder Gargaroths, these things that do cost 6 or 7 mana, right? So I think this has a spot. It's my green choice. My wait, what? Oh, I didn't do artifact next. Well, I'm stupid. Shut up. Next up for artifact, we have a unlicensed Hearse. I will be honest here. This one is definitely more of a sideboard choice. But from the artifacts, I do think this one is probably the one that is going to see the most play. And that's simply just because being able to have a card that comes down allows you to immediately exile 2 cards from a graveyard, but also constantly do that while it grows in power and has a very low crew cost. I think a lot of decks are going to be able to use this card very well. Even if in something like a more controlling deck that's not playing white, because let's be honest, Rest in Peace is essentially the best white anti-graveyard card. In those situations, right, you're still probably going to have a couple creatures lying around, maybe some creature tokens. Maybe you have a creature land, right, that you need because of its color or because of its relatively cheap activation cost, but it doesn't scale very well. This thing scales pretty well because it's not just two creature cards, which would make sense on a Hearse. It's just 2 cards. They do have to be in a single graveyard, but that's not too bad. And if your opponent like stops playing things to exile, if you aren't caring about your own graveyard, exile your own stuff and hit with this, right? I think it has nice potential as a sideboard card. Endless Detour is our broker's deck, or our broker's card. This essentially is just a very annoying card, right? If you're playing Bant Control or Bant Midrange, being able to functionally counter a spell, especially one that might not be able to be countered, or just bouncing a non-land permanent, or yeeting something in a graveyard that maybe your opponent is trying to reanimate, right? Or putting something that you have back on top, right? This can be something in your graveyard that your opponent is trying to yeet that you really need, or it's just a permanent that they're targeting, and you just get benefit from using this card instead. You get to redraw it. Maybe you have, maybe you're playing, even if you're playing a Bant Blink deck, you can have scenarios where you're playing this card because of the fact that it can functionally counter spells, but in those random situations where you really just need to top deck a card that you already have on the battlefield for its ETB trigger, you can end of turn, bounce it back to the top, draw it, cast it again. You know, this card does have a decent amount of play lines, not to be confused with ley lines. And I think that for the Broker's cards, this is probably one that I'm most likely to see in Historic. Next, we have the Cabaretti. I don't think it's even close. I think Fleetfoot Dancer is an incredibly strong card. It's an elf, which might technically matter. I don't know if Naya elves are going to be a thing for Historic. You know, elves I've seen tend to be very much mono-green, ramp into big stompy boy, or ramp into nothing but lords kill you, right? But if you're trying to play like a Naya mid-rangey blitzy style deck, I think Fleetfoot Dancer you can't go wrong with, right? In that style of deck, when you're against an aggro deck, you are essentially the control deck. But with this card, you can race them so well. Right, a 4-mana 4/4 that enters, immediately attacks, has trample, so you're getting that maximum damage for that on your opponent's face, and you're getting that lifelink on top. It means that just this card turns races into an absolute nightmare for your opponent. But also, because it has haste, because it has trample, the lifelink's not going to matter as much here, against controlling decks, you can just keep slapping these down and punching your opponent in the face with them. Right? I think this card is... I'm very happy that Wizards has printed a lot of mid-rangey style cards. That's that I do like, right? This card sees play if mid-range can survive. I'm hoping it does, and I'm hoping these cards will help a lot. For Maestro's, if you thought I was choosing anything but Maestro's Charm, you are wrong. This card seems an absolutely sick Grixis Control spell. You get to look at the top 5 and get a card, right? You're not drawing it, whatever. You also get to put the rest of those in the graveyard, which can fuel things like Sorceress Canta. It can fuel things like Croxus, for example. It can make it so that now you didn't have a target for your flipped Bolus, but you have a target for your flipped Bolus, and you get another Bolus, and then you do some dumb plus shenanigans, and your opponent concedes, right? That's all good, and that's the first ability. Then, of course, you can just drain your opponent for 3. Now, you might be saying, that's not all that great. Grixis Control does like to have some reach, right? In the past, I've played Stomping Boy, the giant whose name I can't remember. Why can't Bonecrush Giant? There we go. His spell is Stomp. I'm currently playing Twin Shot Sniper, right? You do like to just have a little bit of that reach, so that if all your creatures have died and you have lost your man lands for whatever reason, you can still dome your opponent and kill them. But also against aggro, if you're in a situation where all you need is life so that you don't die to a top deck burn spell, this is great, right? Maybe they have a creature you want to remove. Maybe you're in a situation where you really need a different card. Cool, use one of the other 2 abilities. But if you're in a situation where your opponent is playing more burn than not, and you just need to not die to a top deck lightning strike or whatever, this card's great. And then, of course, the last one is you just yeet a creature or planeswalker. Now, technically, you don't yeet them. It does deal the damage, which can technically be mitigated in a number of ways, right? But 5 damage is still a big chunk. And being able to also just deal damage to a planeswalker for 5. Again, 5 is a big chunk. Can just mean that this card is essentially just a kill spell. I'm really excited to play this card in Bolus, and yeah, it's like the best Maestro's card, I think. Getting over to the Riveteers, you might sense a pattern. I really like 4-drops. I love 4-drops because I love mid-range, and I think Zeator's Envoy is fantastic, right? It's 5/4. You could pay it for 5 for its blitz cost to immediately get that stuff, but you have trample, right? Fantastic. When you use combat individual player, you get to look at the top card. You can play a land, or you can cast a spell with mana value equal to or less than the damage dealt from the top without paying its cost, right? And if you choose not to, or you even can't, you still get the card in your hand, right? This is a Jund card that has trample, right? And gives you free stuff. I believe the way it's worded, you may play a land. Yeah, I believe the way it's worded, you would use that land as your land drop for a turn. So, maybe attack with this before you play your land drop. But you might want to not do that, because then you might want to have more lands so you can cast things. So, oh, it doesn't. Oh, it's damage out. Never mind. Yeah, just play your lands freaking post main. It's great. This card is great. It's absolutely fantastic. You get to cast like free spells. You're playing a mid-range deck, right? You're probably not going to need to be casting 5 whole damage worth of spells. Getting 2, 3, 4 damage on this is going to be pretty sick. Even if you only get that off once, it's still a 4-mana 5/4 with trample. Or you could blitz it. You could give it haste, and now your control opponent is dead out of nowhere because they took 5 damage to the face. It's great. I love it. It's great. Void Rend is the Obscura one. I did consider Obscura Charm, but I think that Void Rend is just kind of better. It can't be countered, and it just destroys anything, right? This is a This is an upgraded, downgraded Vindicate. Vindicate might be a sorcery speed. Who cares? Frankly, who cares? Because this just destroys anything. It just destroys a thing. Instant speed, can't be countered. Esper Control got a fun new toy, and they're going to be very annoying, frankly. It destroys anything. Can't be a land. Who cares? It's like, oh, your opponent has a creature killing you. It dies. Your opponent has a planeswalker that's just giving them endless advantage. It dies. Your opponent has an enchantment artifact. Who cares? It dies. It's all gone. Goodbye. Great card. And now the last four are the other cards that I thought were just too strong to not see play, even though I've already covered the other colors. Titan of the Industry. This card seems pretty nuts for a ramp shell. And the reason I say this is because it just gives you options, right? And maybe I value options a little bit too highly compared to others, but the fact that you could pretty easily use this card to both recover and have a sizable board, right? Like you can play this to gain 5 life and a 4/4. So it's 7 mana for 11/11 power and toughness and 5 life, right? When you are a ramp deck like this, you might be in situations where your opponent has been just giving you the aggro, where while you're just twiddling your thumbs, making land drops, ramping a little bit, playing some mana dorks that hopefully aren't dying, and then all of a sudden, one card, boom, stabilized, right? Or if your opponent is doing some other nonsense, blow up their stuff. You can just put a shield counter on this if you're playing against a control deck, right? Where you're just like, I'm just going to make it so this guy can't get blown up. And then I also have a Rhino that you have to deal with, right? Or I also destroy your O-ring style effect, keeping one of my other monstrosities out, right? I think this card is just incredibly strong. The bad thing about it is just the fact that it costs 7, so it has to kind of be in a deck that wants to be ramping. And there are a ton of green cards that are real broken. So, kind of determined on that. Reservoir Kraken, it's a freaking Desecration Demon, except slightly different. It has Trample and Ward, which is nuts. Right? I think Desecration Demon had Trample and Flying, but you don't need the evasion as much when what you get out of this card are evasive creatures. Right? If your opponent decides they don't want to deal with a 6/6 attacker, they can tap this, and you get a dude that can just block. You can get a dude that can just attack. Free chip damage. Free chump blocks, right? And, by the way, this is each combat, right? So you can put this in a situation where maybe you have some cards that untap creatures for some cost. Or the turn that you cast this. On 4, you got to remember, this is on 4, right? You can play this on 4. Your opponent doesn't want to attack into this. But if they're tapping one of their creatures, that's one fewer creature for them to attack with. And you have a chump blocker, right? I feel like this card just does so many different things. If your opponent is playing a control deck, right? This is just a very annoying creature early on. They have to essentially spend an entire turn and or like premium removal, like a board wipe, to kill just this card. Because they probably aren't going to have creatures to tap. So you just get to keep hitting them with this, which is 4 mana. 4 mana. Nuts. Inspiring Harvest here, you might be saying, Justin, 6. A lot of these have just been like rares and mythics. We can get the good stuff. I think this is the good stuff. Now, you might notice that this is functionally just the, that damn elemental whose name I cannot remember. But it's literally just this. 3 mana, 2/1 flying, enters a battlefield. I think it's only draw a card even. You don't even get to gain the life. The reason this card is so much better than that card, even though that card was good, it has elemental synergy. This not only has angel synergy, it has cleric synergy. There's already a deck that likes to play both angels and clerics. This draws you cards. It replaces itself, right? Which is very fantastic. Those decks can sometimes run out of gas. It also gains you life, which synergizes with a bunch of the stuff in the deck. But this competes for the coveted 3-drop slot. Whether or not this card will see play is based entirely upon, can that style of deck make room for this? And what we might see, right, is we might see that deck move a little bit more towards a Urian direction, right? Include a few more angels and clerics that are kind of like just off, but if you have enough of that card draw, if you have enough of the redundancy and the effects that you need, I think this card could definitely go a long way to making that deck go pretty sick. And then, of course, we had that put Ob here. This is a Planeswalker where you can get another version of it. It can already go into the Rakdos Sacrifice deck, or, you know, Rakdos X Sacrifice style decks, because that deck, 1, already wants to be sacking things, 2, already has a couple demons and or devils, depending, of course, on your specific build, 3, likes it when you have the ability to make more sack fodder, especially ones that do extra work, and 4, it only costs freaking 3 mana. Or you can weave this in with a lot of your other plays, because that deck does play a lot of low-cost cards. And for what it's worth, that's just for the Sacrifice style deck. This also could just be fine in some sort of Rakdos X mid-range deck. Yeah, I mean, you could put this in a Rakdos, what are those things called? Discard decks. Do we have Waste Not, right? Maybe. If we have Waste Not, right, this could just sack a zombie that you get from Waste Not. It's great. I'm pretty sure we have Waste Not. There's so many cards. They're all in my head, but there's so many formats, and I don't know where all of them go. Regardless, I think this card's absolutely fantastic. I'm really excited to play a bunch of Streets from New Capenna. Once release hits, you're going to be seeing a lot of arena content, because I'm going to be playing the crap out of it. And then, you know, eventually it'll wane down a little bit more. I'll be playing more Slay Spire, etc., etc. But yeah, I'm looking forward to playing a bunch of Historic, as well as Historic Brawl. There's a lot of new legendary creatures here, and I definitely want to try out a lot of them. Yeah, that's the end of the video. Hope you've enjoyed this format. I would like to thank my lovely patrons for the continued support. If you'd like to join them in supporting the show, you find links down in the description. Or, honestly, as I said at the top, liking, commenting, subscribing, all of that stuff really helps, because it tells YouTube, hey, this guy has some sort of engagement with his cool audience. Maybe we should introduce new cool people so that everyone can just be cool. And he can survive. Anyway, again, like, this is a different format of video. I only showed my face at the beginning. I didn't show my face through it. Let me know what you think. Be sure to head over to my Twitch channel today, as I will be playing in the open, and then I will be talking about the rest of the preview cards with the chat. And then after that, we'll probably brew some decks for New Capenna, maybe play a game of Slay the Spire or something like that. We're gonna be having fun. It's gonna be a fun time. Until next time, I will be one.